Good afternoon. I welcome everyone to the session titled Collectivizing Women in Ultra Poverty to Enable Market Access, Cracking the Challenge. I warmly welcome the moderator for this session, Shweta S. Banerjee, Country Portfolio Advisor, India, BRAC International, to take her place on the stage. Welcome, Shweta. Now, I would like to invite on stage our distinguished panelists for the session, Nishant Gupta, Social and Environment Impact Advisor, Walmart. Welcome. Saroj Kumar Mahapatra, Executive Director, Pradhan. Digonto Mohanty, Director of Programs, Trickle Up India. Nishikant Dikshit, National Program Officer, Transforming Rural India Foundation. Shweta, I would request you to kindly. Perfect.
Hello, check. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the session on collectivizing women in ultra poverty to enable market access. We have a very distinguished panel of CSO representative, but also government representative and private sector. So I'm very happy to have this diversity of professional expertise and experience. Just before we start, I'd give the mic to each one of you just to briefly introduce your organization and what it does quickly, and including your role in it.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I think this session should be relatively easier as compared to the one right after the lunch because we have had like caffeine shots just before this. So yeah, hi, I'm Nishant Gupta. I work as Shweta mentioned, I work as a social and environment advisor to Walmart.org. Walmart Foundation has been present in India for many years, and for the last few years, we have been focused on empowering farmer collectives in the shape of farmer produce organizations. So we work with a lot of partners across a few states in the country, and I'm very happy to notice that a couple of them are already here. So Pradhan and Trickle Up are two of the partners that we work with to facilitate this transformation.
Thank you, Nishant. Thank you, Sweta. I am Saroj Mahapatra. Right now, I am the Executive Director of Pradhan. As you know, Pradhan is working mostly in the Central India tribal region. We work with more than 10 lakh households directly, and with another 10 lakh households through various partner NGOs. So we are partnering with near about 140 NGOs at present. So apart from Central India, we also work in South Bihar, Northeast Bihar, and South Rajasthan. And most of our clients are actually women. And we work very intensively with the various state governments and national government. So one of our major focus area is around social mobilization, building the institution of poor and livelihoods. And we have partnership with, in a very large scale, with the various state governments and with other actors also. So I'll be talking about the details in the subsequent sessions actually. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's a privilege to be here. I'm Digonto Mohanty. I work as a Director of Programs for Trickle Up. Trickle Up is an organization which is working in India since last 35, 40 years. And basically we work with the most vulnerable and marginal communities, specifically women and people, persons with disabilities, PVTGs. And we have been working through different approaches. The one to mention was graduation approach, of course. And we have done a lot of innovations around that. And we have tried our level best to scale it up. And very recently, there was a discussion and a question in the previous session regarding the post-graduation approach or something we are doing similar. I'll be talking about that more in the session, which is called ladder. So we are there working in different approaches, trying out different innovations, and we're trying to scale it up with the different agencies like JSLPS and Odisha Livelihood Mission, and we're also working with local partners to enrich their knowledge and learn from them, and of course the community. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nishikant Dikshit, and I represent Transforming Rural India Foundation. Previously, and it's almost 20 years now, working in the field of rural livelihoods. I've worked with Pradhan for 5 years, for 9 years with Reliance Foundation. And for last 8 years, I've been associated with UPSRLM and presently with NRLM. So I've been part of a technical support unit, which actually helps in system strengthening and livelihoods in the SRLM and NRLM system. So and Transforming Rural India Foundation, basically it works on the concept of Samaj Sarkar Bazaar, where we plan to intervene with almost 1 lakh poorest of the villages and bring in the holistic development for the families around there. So I'll be kind of representing both TRIF and NRLM in that context. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think the efforts to collectivize rural population is not new in India. I mean, we've been doing cooperatives for a very long time, and that has worked really well for milk and sugar. The SHG movement has now had a long history, almost 2 decades, and the aggregated SHG structures like the CLF or the village organizations have also worked very well in some parts and not so much in some parts. And now we're sort of looking at third generation. So farmer producer organizations, farmer interest groups, but more formalized. So I want you to sort of respond to my next question with this sort of long historical view, in the sense that what was the need to move to this third generation, and also third generation of targeting. So now we're looking at ultra poor, not just the rural poor in that way. So the challenge is much more. So for the first segment of the panel, I'll start by asking each panelist a question. The first one is for Nishikant. You worked extensively in, you just explained from the government point of view. So when you look at the large scale that you have before you, I mean, your vision is sort of the most broadest here. What in your view has worked so far? And what do we need to work towards when it comes to rural women collectives?
Yeah, thanks, Shweta. So I understand that this particular program, specifically NRLM, has been there since 2011, and it talks about universalization. That is another thing. What remains important is that collectivization and including kind of working on a sustainable livelihoods for them, it takes a long haul. Over a period of time, different state governments have kind of taken it over the period. They took some time to implement it, but right now we have reached almost 8 crore women which are there in the fold. There have been extensive effort to include ultra poor. That is what we are actually specifically talking about. When we talk about the community architecture, which is on this SHG VOCLF, I think it has worked well as of now. We have cases where we say that the poorest of the poor are usually left out, the 5% of the women or the families that we target. But there have been specific, we have learned in the last session also, there have been specific efforts through special projects where we take up those initiatives and ensure that those ultra poor or the poorest of the poor come on fold. Now, one is that having this community architecture in place, and second is the livelihood collectives that we need to have, which will ensure that the market access happens, and which is in terms of producers group and producers company. As of now, kind of if we see the history, almost 20 years have passed, but still producers company in the way and the manner they operate, they are the best fit to access markets for poor. So first is inside the government also, we understand that and we have been recently, this word has come in place, the whole of government approach, where inside the rural development department also we are planning that our departments ourselves should work together. Manrega along with Pradhan Mantri Awas, along with NRLM, they should work together. Similarly, the other ministries and departments, maybe say agriculture, fisheries, they should all come together. So this whole of government approach has been, right now we have been focusing on NRLM and through TRIF, and the specific focus remains on ensuring 1 lakh income to each families for 2.5 crores families. Now we'll have to see how those ultra poor get into the system, what kind of mainstreaming happens, how this they ensure that there's a credit to them, how do they ensure savings. All of it will have to fall in place. So that's all for now. Thank you.
Thanks very much. For Saroj, this is your question. Pradhan has been working extensively with tribal women, and that's one of the most vulnerable population of our country and the hardest to reach. So could you talk about, 2 to 3 major lessons that Pradhan has learned working with this particular group?
So I think the approach that we are following is like, first it's the institutions women, which Nishikant has already shared. So NRLM is putting their platform actually. I mean, organizing the women into groups, and then financial intervention, social mobilization, gender equality. So all these things are integrated into the groups actually. And these are actually the affinity based groups actually. So these are more beyond savings and credit. And then while organizing the groups, we understand their livelihood scenarios and then how to strengthen that livelihood actually. So not bringing the livelihood activities from outside, but how to strengthen the livelihood activities and what are the resources they are having actually. Like suppose in the tribal area, so we are mostly working in the tribal regions. So they are having the land resource, or lack of water resources there, lack of conservation structures are there. So how to improve the production and productivity of the land resources? So that is one of the major shift that we are doing in our interventions. And then coming to that, these are basically the monocropped areas. So how to intensify the water resources and irrigation coverage. So intensification and diversification of the livelihood activities. So that is the one of the broad contours of our engagement. So we generally facilitate the community collectives to intensify their livelihood portfolio, and then linkages with the programs like flagship program like MGNRGS, creation of livelihood assets in a very large scale, taking the landscape into the considerations. So ecology is one of the major that is one of the major approach that we are following. And then by organizing these collectives into these, economic institutions like FPOs or the agriculture production clusters, and suppose there are winner crops around a area, so how to bring that production to a level so that market players can come in actually. So sustainable linkages with the markets and traders. So that is also one of the major interventions. So our learning has been like strong collectives of women is very much required. And during promotion of community collectives and CLFs and VOs, we have experienced is like near about 5 to 7% of the vulnerable households are generally left out. So these people are basically, these women are basically the vulnerable households. Though there is a database of ACCC, Socioeconomic Class Census. So you can see the deprivation indicators, like say there are 7 deprivation indicators. But if the VOs and CLFs can be empowered to, they can be facilitated to identify the most vulnerable women actually in the entire, in their own villages. So that is a sustainable model actually. And second is basically we work around the 5A framework actually for this livelihood interventions. So first is the asset base of that individual woman, that is more important. Then second is the access to various basic services like PDS, like pension, like the insurance. Then third is like if whenever we are going to a village and then intervening with the tribal household, they generally tell you we cannot do such type of things. So changing the mindset of those people is very much important. So like we cannot do to shift is we can do, So that is a mental shift actually.
So what you're saying is that tribal women are more reluctant to be in collectives?
No, it requires substantial time and effort to be engaged with them, to be with them. Like Professor Esme told, na, ki young people should be there to visit the villages, they should spend time in the villages. So that emotional connect is very much required. So it requires a substantial time and effort to bring these people from the vicious cycle of poverty actually.
But how is the life of a tribal woman different?
Yeah. So if you see the tribal women, I think they are very simple, and then they are ready to accept the changes, provided they are organized into the collectives, and they are very honest in that sense, and they can share like whatever struggles they are facing, but at the same time they require a guided facilitation also. So to build that entire ecosystem with the various type of stakeholder, like the how to orchestrate that multi-stakeholder facilitation at the grassroots level, I think that is more important, like funding agencies, then donors, then markets, then community collectives, panchayat. Like if we can facilitate the PRI, the panchayat and CBO's collaboration at the grassroots level, so then this graduation model can be done at a very faster level, and that's a sustainable model actually. So there are four stakeholders. Just I would like to conclude by saying this. So one part is the community collectives, the SHGs, VOs, and the CLFs. We are working with near about 75,000 SHGs right now, and more than 1,000 CL, more than I think. Yeah, 10,000 VOs, village organizations, directly at the grassroots level. So, to be very precise, the holistic interventions is very much required, where we are talking about the comprehensive livelihood, and there are 5 dimensions. So, first is the centrality of the woman, second is the inclusion, third is the interventions in the nutrition, income, and asset base of those households, and fifth is the ecological dimension. So, if we can intervene in this comprehensive manner, then that would be sustainable.
Okay, thanks so much. Talking about comprehensive interventions, Diganto Trickle Up is sort of working with the graduation approach, with and in PVTG areas, particularly vulnerable tribal groups areas. And as the previous session also demonstrated, we don't need to go into details on the graduation approach here. But how important are those steps where market access is actually the final part of things, and how does that change the confidence of within women to engage with the market?
Thank you, Shweta. To start with, I mean, I would like to say it has been discussed that what worked well in graduation approach and which is very crucial and important is mentoring and coaching. So that has worked well for us. We have seen that across the globe, that is has worked well. But what in coaching and mentoring that really worked for tribal women, for PBTGs across different communities and geographies is a kind of localized approaches to coaching. So all coaching may not be successful. We have tried. We have seen that coaching has not worked in some places, but it has worked. I mean, magically well in some places. So in graduation approach, sequencing is always important, but more important is to go into deep implementation of that. So when I say localization of coaching, I mean the coaches that we work with, or the kind of community cadres that we create, the frontliners are the local people who understand the context well.
So they are tribal women?
They are tribal women. So we have different cadres. We have tried out different cadres of coaches, different types of coaches. We have also experimented with a concept called Smart Sakhis. And currently we are working with PVTG communities where we have partnered with JSLPS. We are working with the change makers who are also the people from the local PVTG communities. So we need to empower them. We need to understand what they are saying. We need to capitalize on that resource. So that's very important in graduation approach and basically coaching. That has worked well for us. Now coming to the challenge part that you have mentioned, I would just like to, because I basically work in the field and I'm a kind of machine in the entire construction process, where we know beyond the architectural thing. So I'll just talk about my small experience that we had. We started this project called Ultra Poor Market Access with the support of Walmart Foundation. And when we were going through an immersion exercise, I was inside a room where there were 100, almost 85, 90 women sitting together they all belong to the producer groups. And I just observed that four of them were speaking and the rest were silent. So I thought they were the four people who are the office bearers, maybe the president, secretary, or that. They were not. They were those four people who had big patches of lands. So that is where it all starts. I mean, that is where the exclusion starts, where you are not part of aggregation, you are not part of production, you don't contribute, and obviously you get secluded. Be it a very strong format of collectivization, you are excluded. So that is where we started this UPMA program, and the major challenge was to link them with the market and get them through a process where they experience better price realization, better integration with the market. So we had to start with why I'm saying this. Collectivization sounds very straight and simple, but there are nuances which we should be very meticulous about. So we realized in the beginning, when we started to work with the people with whom we had been working for 3 years, so some of them wanted to drop out. They said we were individually fine. Graduation approach was good, but we will not be part of the collectives. Why? So we try to understand why, and we came to know that they were not comfortable with profit sharing. They were not compatible with many things. So while doing collectivization, sometimes we jump into collectivization. We did not jump here. So we developed a vision building module for them. So it was all about building the aspirations, building the aspirational thinking. So we developed a vision building exercise first, and we tried to bring them to the fold. We took time for that. We took 1.5 months to develop the vision building process. So after that, we then stepwise we went into a market and value chain analysis. Then we decided on the value chains, and then we did not again jump into any kind of grant or linking them with the bank, with the market, nothing. So we just work on their agency.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point you've made. You cannot forget the household when you look at the collective, and you cannot forget the collective when you work on the household. So thank you for that. Nishant, now the socialist in me wants to provoke you a little bit. Why is Walmart interested in working with the ultra poor? And how is it applying, a gender lens? And what is the benefit of a private sector approach?
So just a quick bookkeeping clarification, right? So Walmart Foundation is a separate entity, which is a philanthropic organization that works on agriculture. So our work actually is rather very old in the agricultural space. So Walmart Foundation, not just in India, but world over, has been working in the agriculture space. And also that emanates from the fact that the larger organization or the corporate has very deep roots in agricultural produce and the selling and the buying of the agricultural produce. So there is a very deep understanding of how the value chain works, how the supply chain works, right? Now, our strategy used to be earlier to train the farmers to improve productivity, to improve production, etc. But we were also finding that the training approach was not really helping us identify if we are doing good or not, or if we are really creating an impact that we wanted. So we evolved toward this new approach called shared value, where we still believe that businesses have the best opportunity to create lasting social impact. However, in a lot of cases, there are certain sections of society who are not yet ready to work with open markets and free markets as they stand today, right? And for that is where philanthropic capital comes in as a catalytic capital to create the capacities in these sections of society where they feel over a period of time ready to work with open markets. So as I said, business creates lasting impact, but sections are not ready. So philanthropic capital comes in, creates capacity, so on and so forth. And hence, and this is also, this comes in with a lot of experience in Central America, South Africa, and other geographies where farmer collectives have been the best bet, where we believe that scale solves for so many challenges on the ground: the problem of aggregation, the problem of being able to provide quality and cheap inputs, the ability to actually pick up a few kgs from thousands of farmer and then being able to negotiate as a business entity with the large institutional buyers who can actually provide a much higher price for your produce. uh, all of these provide brilliant opportunities to the entire ecosystem. So yeah, so that's why we are interested.
Great. Okay, so my next question is also quite broad, but each one of you can answer. I think that the human element in especially working with collectives and ultra poor women is crucial. Most of you mentioned the quality of coaches or the human interface that collectivizes. What is the role for technology? And how do you see and how have you used various technological devices, apps, etc., and have they been of help, or have they also not been of help? Start with you, Nishikant.
So I understand that for ultra poor, usually technology is a barrier initially, and if you talk about using apps, or for that matter, any system through which information flows and which can empower them, so that is very important. So a lot of effort needs to go for help them make use it. So that is one. But technology in general for working in rural area is very important. As of now, in NRM system itself, almost most of the community resource persons, they have started using apps for data filling. And for that matter, there are specific ways like the banking correspondence keys, which for them, they'll have to use this method if they have to do the digital financing. So I think it is catching up. That is one. Second, for ensuring transparency, and when I'm talking about it, I'm specifically talking about say the transaction that happens in the community organization or the livelihood collectives. So, for example, if you are part of a collective and say you're going to an aggregation center and you're giving some produce to them, so instantly, if there's a phone on which a message comes, or for that matter, if there's a receipt which comes, or for that matter, if the money get transferred and you get an so that kind of things, obviously it's empowering, and then the dependency decreases. So that is how we need to see technology, how it can actually help ultra poor to access market, and generally rural poor to access market for that matter.
Diganto?
Yes, I think it's a very important component, and the program that I was referring to, where this is also a pathway for success. So we have tried out many such models. In one case, we did not go for any marketing app. We just used WhatsApp for marketing. So the vendor is at one point, and there are 4 vendors who were connected to the groups, and the groups just sent them the photographs of the mushroom that they came up with, and everybody quoted, and they agreed to the higher one, and just started discussion. It's very simple, as straight as that. So, and the other thing is about the ultra poor people. We have also tried a shared device model where a mobile phone with an advisory app is there with 3 people, and they share it. So there are innovations, and we need to do more innovations around this, but it has to be very simple and user friendly.
Saroj?
Yeah, I think technology is very much important, but it's not sufficient actually. It's necessary in that sense. And at the same time, I would like to say that that locus of initiative has to be with the community collectives, women community collectives, and the locus of control and influence has to be with the, again, not with us or with the outsider. It has to be with the community collectives. Then only this process would sustain. And technology, digitalization, these are only the support conditions actually. So these are not the end state. These are only the support conditions to reach the end state actually. And if we can digitalize for example, to reach to a large scale, we need to digitalize the training models. But see, there is a importance on this human processual engagement actually. And for specifically for these ultra poor communities, this 2 to 3% of the women who are being left out of the major flagship program. So that requires a very good emotional connect, and the human processual engagement from the facilitator. So anyway, techno-managerial aspects are very much important, but that should not compete with the human
Not
processual
replace.
engagement.
Yes, that's the core of
So
it.
there should be a balance between
Yeah,
these two.
I
Yeah.
agree. Nishant?
Uh, so just a couple of clarifications. So I'm rather new to the sector, so it's only been a year. And before that, I was working with Flipkart. So like that's the hub for technological innovations, right? So when I entered the sector, my expectations or my willingness or my determinedness to impose technology in everything that the programs were running was very high, right? And I would go into the ground and I was like, this can be solved through technology. That can be like, why are we not using technology, right? So I started from that vantage point, and very soon I realized that it has to serve a purpose, right? And it has to actually take into account the context of the ground. And unfortunately, at this point in time, a lot of technology interventions are not really ready to incorporate the ground reality. But there is, of course, so much opportunity, and especially if you're talking about women, there is a very clear boundary that unfortunately in the interiors of the country which is there, where women are not really accustomed to stepping out of the house, where they're and hence their participation in the marketing of the produce is extremely limited, leading into belief that a lot of people would from outside the sector would believe that agriculture is a man's job, which it is not. And here is where perhaps technology can come in and say that, even if you're at the house, there is so much of capacity building that can happen. There is so much market linkage through technology that can happen. Discovery of price, discovery of expectations of quality, all of those things are extremely, extremely possible. And there is a huge opportunity for the organizations to come in and deploy these technologies. But as I said, it has to be contextual. It has to be extremely customized to the needs of where it can be and should be used.
Great. That's quite a journey from Flipkart. So, okay. So my question, any one of you can jump in and answer this one, if more of you want to answer, is that the most recent mantra that we're hearing as a collective for market access is farmer-producer organizations. So in terms of scale, what are you seeing on the field? Can we right now tell our audience that we have at scale FPOs operating for the ultra poor women? If not, why? And how do you see it still as a most viable option to collectivize?
So I'll answer this question based on the experience that I had for last 7 years with UPS RLM. One is that obviously the large scale producers company, which is working beyond say 4-5 districts and operating at least 25-30 blocks, that are the ones which are going to sustain over a long period of time. So that is one. Second, if we propose or if we think of as of now that if we have separate livelihood collectives for ultra poor, that won't work. Actually, the economies on scale and collectivization is important. So it remains important that we do mainstream ultra poor in the existing marketing system that we are doing for the community. So I'll take an example. In 2019, we started with one milk producer company in this place called in the Bundelkhand region, and with headquartered in Jhansi. Uh, it was with the NRLM money, 60% coming from the government of India, 40% coming from government of UP. And till December 2022, we have achieved a collective turnover of 409 crore rupees. And as of now, we have around 53,000 women operating in 800 villages of Bundelkhand, which is supposed to be a place where there's less water, it's rain-fed, and you can understand there are multiple other problems, specifically in, I'm talking about the Uttar Pradesh region of Bundelkhand. And with this, almost in this 53,000, 83% women are from small and marginal farmers community. They own either one livestock or two livestock at max. And the systems are strong. We have a technical partner in terms of NDDB Dairy Services. Milk is a business where the daily cash flows in. And if you can see, as of now, from those 409 crores, or 359 crore rupees has gone as payment to the women. And without fail, it is happening on 3rd, 13th, and 23rd of each month. So based on that success, government of Uttar Pradesh announced a special scheme called Mahila Samarthya Yojana. And now with support from NRLM and from the state government scheme, we are going to have 7 such collectives, producer enterprise, large scales, covering 37 districts, 4,500 villages, and 5.5 lakh women will be part of this. And it's going to happen in next 2 years or so. So this is, I'm just taking an example, dairy has been an established sector, but even in UP, which is one of the largest producers, this kind of association was not there. They obviously the state government, the federations, as milk federation was not in a good shape. Private players were operating, but this kind of systematic system has helped. And now, from a kind of the project which was planned for 36,000 women, it is going to 5.5. So this is how it happens. So when we talk about ultra poor, we'll have to ensure and mainstream them in the formal institutions which are there for rural poor. We cannot have separate those institutions for ultra poor, and we wish them to succeed, but that will be very difficult.
Thanks. Nishant?
So I'll start with the fact that FPO ecosystem in general in itself is rather new, right? So the focus that the sector has, or the FPOs have started getting over the last 3 to 5 years, is very high. In a sector like agriculture, that's practically nothing, right? So I think there has to be a lot of innovative approaches to see how the FPOs can solve this challenge. One thing is very obvious, that on its own, the ultra poor and especially the ultra poor women might not get access to the market on its own, right? So there has to be a very active problem solving that needs to be done. Now, whether would it be through existing large FPOs incorporating a few value chains that the ultra poor women can bring, or can it actually be a separate FPO? I think we are open to experimenting at this point in time to see what can possibly work, right? As I mentioned, that we work with Trickle Up and we work with Pradhan, and both their approaches in the same sector have been relatively different, right? So Trickle Up started with collectivizing women into FIGs, ultra poor women into FIGs, and now we are talking about connecting them with a FPO. Whereas Pradhan actually took up the existing SHGs and quickly converted them into FPO, and now is capacity building with those women, right? So I think there is a lot of scope to do that. Some of the things are obviously very obvious, that these ultra poor women don't have farm land, right? So the value chain selection has to be extremely critical. Would it be mushroom cultivation, or should it be livestock? Should it be poultry? And how do we link it to markets? And of course, I'm harping on about the fact that linkage to markets is essential, because that's where our theory of change emerges. That once you have access to market, the rest of the process becomes simpler, and there is also a motivation in the community to work towards. So yeah.
So I think we should. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Diganta, please. Oh,
Can I just add?
yeah,
Two,
sure.
three
Please go
points?
ahead.
Yeah, I think these FPOs require very substantial investment in terms of credit, in terms of basic services, and then in terms of linkages to the markets, in terms of also financial investment also, like in terms of asset creation. So if we talk about the specific to very vulnerable communities or the ultra poor or the PBTGs, their requirement is very different actually. Like most of them do not have land actually. So if we are talking about the FPOs around farm sector, then generally they are excluded. And if government is giving some land to the ultra poor or PVTG's household, then it requires time for them to adopt this commercialization of vegetables or commercialization of agriculture actually. So I have seen working with the PVTGs like Biror communities in Jharkhand or the Kamar tribes in Chhattisgarh. So their lifestyle is very different. And I think we need to be with them to understand their situation and whatever they are planning to do, what is their skill set, what are the resources they are having. So all the livelihood planning has to be done around those actually. And possibly might be small interventions, but might be small for us, but these are very important interventions for them, like access to basic services or the livelihood planning or creation of assets, and then it requires substantial time actually. As far as my experience is concerned, like at least 6 to 7 years of investment, and then grooming them, and then we promoted 67 FPOs across various states, and almost the memberships are near about more than 1,000 women members per FPOs. And the if you see the average turnover is that would be around 1.5 crore rupees per average profit is like that. But generally, the ultra poor households are not covered in those APOs actually. So that is one of the concerns. But if we invest on them, like the basic services, if we ensure the support services to this ultra poor, then they can be included actually. Like we cannot go to the individual household, but if we can promote the community resource person or the agri entrepreneurs at the door, then they can provide the services at the doorstep. So such type of enabling service systems can be ensured actually by grooming people at the grassroots level.
Sure.
Just to add what Nishant and just you have said, Saroj, is that what we perceive at Trickle Up is that, we have been working with the ultra poor population for a long time now. We have understood their readiness to access market, to access FPOs. So we basically in UPMA program, we worked with their market readiness and readiness to merge with the APOs. So we first, and we got support from Seva, from Ahmedabad on this. So they came and trained the FIGs that we formed. So we did not form a very formal group. We brought people from different SHGs and we formed an informal group, keeping in mind that one day they will be merged. They will not sustain and they will not be duplicated. They will not duplicate. So we have formed these informal groups, and gradually in those informal groups, we build their capacities, build their readiness that, okay, this will happen. They had a lot of doubt in mind. What are you going to do if you are part of the APOs? They are big and all. They did not know what an APO is. And APO people did not know how to merge, how to take this ultra poor. So we had to work on the FIG side, we had to work on the APO side, and we brought them together. And just what Nathalie was mentioning, that now today 1,000 we have created, and we provided them support with the equity share. So they contributed something. We helped them in that. So now Nabad is going to help them. So that way, this merger has to happen.
The ownership, yeah.
This ownership has to happen on both the sides, and we have to work on both the sides, on the FPO side and the ultra poor FIG side. Then only it's feasible.
Thanks. So just as we conclude and open up for questions, I just want you to take 30 seconds to 45 seconds and recount one anecdote from your experience interacting, learning from women that you're working with that makes you optimistic about the future.
Yeah, so I'll go first. So it's almost way back, some 6 years back. So we work in a specific village, and the lady what I was talking to, though she was part of that SHG, but we were just talking to her. We went to her house, and so we were just trying to discuss how things are moving forward. There was a issue of absenteeism, and then she was kind of indulgence for various reasons. The other households knew about it. They wanted to help, but she was not forthcoming, and somehow the other households were also kind of hesitant to help. And we just went there, so we kind of helped, played this that they can give a soft loan to her, and the repayment can be done later on. And but later on, I think things went fine, and she was kind of a regular member of the SHG. So that's what I recall right now.
Okay.
Yeah. I would like to speak about a lady called Sukanti Pradhani.
Okay.
So she and her husband used to migrate to Hyderabad to the big lanes in Balangir, Odisha. So they are in Buribahal block. So after our graduation program, when she was convinced by our coaches that they can stop going for this distress migration, and she decided to stay back and just allowed her husband to go. Okay, so in 1 year time, she first went into poultry, then she went into dockery. Just in 1 year time, she bought something. She bought a small pump, and it started working. And she just tried to do something in that small patch of land that they had. In 1 year of time, she just called back her husband and said, now you need not go. Let us do something here. And I have found out the ways. I have planned my livelihood. And you are a part of that. So the husband stayed back. And she proudly showed me that, see, I have stopped my husband from, now we have a happy family. Now we can educate our children. They were just getting disturbed. Okay. Every time I go, even if I don't have a program, and I go and visit that village just to see that woman and her husband, and see that smile that is there in their face. That is the magic of graduation approach. Thank you.
There were many examples.
Sure.
I would I would like to share one. Like in 2009, when I visited one of the village at Dhamtari district of Chhattisgarh, so there the people used to migrate to other areas actually. All the women member used to stay in the village, and then male member go to the other villages in search of work actually. Then we have intervened in their resource management plan, and then linkages with the government, and then creation of livelihood assets in their villages. And then over a period of time, the productivity enhancement and production enhancement, and then linking them to the markets. So once the NABARD CGM, he came to that village, and he was interacting with that collective actually. And Sona Mandapi is one of the women SHG members there. So she has, shared her life journey actually, like how they were residing in the before 2009, and then after interventions during the, what is the change they are having in their during these 3-4 years actually, including the income enhancement, including the asset base, including their the say in the decision making process in the household actually, and also the participation in the Gram Sabha, and how they brought the entire village into single fold actually. So that NABARD CGM, then he was so impressed, like he told this during the NABARD Foundation Day, he has invited that collectives and that Didi actually, Sona Mandapi, to teach their all the AGMs and DDMs of NABARD how the resource management plan and how this transformation can happen with the women collectives actually.
Wow.
And that was a very proud moment for all of us actually. Yeah.
So this is one of the incidents that happened when I just moved into this role, and it was last year summer, and I was visiting one of the project sites, and we were interacting with a lot of women self-help groups. And during some of the conversation, I don't remember how, but it just came out, and one of the field staff actually shared that a lot of women in this particular village have wrong identity cards, because when they went out to get the ID cards created, their husbands or fathers accompanied, and if it was the husbands, and the husbands would just say that if my name is Ram Kumar, she becomes Ram Kumari, and that's how all the identity cards were, a lot of people were getting the identity cards created like that. And then there was another example that in our community, we call our girls like chutki and stuff like that, but it's actually after the marriage when the girl actually gets the name. And it was also very shocking for me because I was completely new to the development sector, but also that it's 2022, right? And but when we prodded more, it was extremely rewarding to see that how that community had collectivized itself into SHGs and then into FPOs, innovated on the value chains, got into the value chains that were not really being carried out in that geography. And were actually doing a turnover of a few lakh rupees in this third or the fourth year itself. So it was very shocking, but it was also very rewarding to see that the women from the community, which with that background, were now able to collectivize and come forward and engage with businesses in a manner they do. So yeah.
Thanks. So with that, let's open it up for questions, comments, any other thoughts, critical feedback. Professor Hashmi, please reintroduce yourself.
I'm Hashmi. I'm at Brack University, and working on the global graduation expansions. My question to actually, I would like Nishant and Nishikant to respond because I know a little bit about both Pradhan and Trikalap. And this issue, it has to do with people in extreme poverty or ultra poor being part of the value chain and FPOs. In terms of economies of scale and in terms of massive scaling up, yes, I know several NGOs are linking them up to value chains, but somehow, from the little I've seen, it doesn't add up to major productivity increases. Maybe it ends up being maybe a 10%, 15% value addition to the earnings, but not something that leaps them forward. So my question to the two of you is what should be happening so that there's high productivity, far more intensive engagement that really leads to them going at least and over a 4 or 5 year period twice the poverty line.
So note that question or note it down, whichever one you like. Let's take one more. Please introduce yourself.
I'm reintroducing myself. My name is Surya Mani Rahul. I'm a practitioner in livelihoods. I
Nice.
work for Global Agri System. The question is, we talked about integration, inclusion of poorest of the poor in the FPOs. There is a parallel session going on other side also on the FPOs. Market doesn't differentiate between the member who is ultra poor and poor or a member in the FPO. That is first thing that I wanted to bring to your notice. Second, my comment is, there is a recent assessment in Maharashtra, and government speaks of 17,000, 18,000 FPOs. Only 16%, quote unquote, 16% are operational. SFSC strategy document says 35% are operational. That is the statistics. And within that, integration of ultra poor matters a lot. I like an example. In Koraput in Orissa, they cultivate millets, finger millets. And the market price is, local market is 18 rupees per kilo. If they do sell, as per the government price, it is 30 to 33 rupees per kilo. The question is, if they can store for a while, for a month or 15 days or 20 days, as they will be procured. Till the procurement happens by the government, there is no scope, they will be under distress sale. And this is, I'm talking of ultra poor families, not covered under these programs of Pradhan or Trickle Off. The question is, within that, the facilitation and coaching, mentoring is very critical to come up to that distress cell level. Otherwise, inclusion of the ultra poor in a FPO format and also governance and sharing of the benefits will be a big question because you go by the statistic. I did an evaluation of a very large NGO, those who have promoted 25, now they have more last year. And they, out of 25, only 5 are in a position to meet up they have reached operational and financial sustainability. The rest others are in nascent stage in various phases. If I go back to Hasimi's earlier, it takes 11 years or something to go graduation to middle class or whatever class. Then how will try to integrate? My friends will better be in a position to answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take these two questions. Who wants to go first? Yes, please, Nishikant.
So I'll first respond to Professor Hashmi's question. So one is whatever I've learned over this period of time is going to take a long haul. Rahulji was also mentioning it. And for working with ultra poor, whatever it takes, we'll have to do that. Be it grant, be a large amount of investment, be kind of whatever counseling, mentoring support which is there. But the point remains is that for mainstreaming them in the specific market access system, which is whatever we call it as cooperative, producers group, or producers company, they need to go together. which is because I was also mentioning about the collectivization and the effort and access to that market remains. So as of now, a huge amount of investment. The pilots have been done. A lot of pilots have been done. Many of the states we have been doing it. We have been seeing result. Specifically from government systems and integration, the whole of government approach. A lot of efforts, amount, and resources needs to go. A lot of money is required. It cannot happen without money, for that matter, and it should go in form of grants and should be implemented in a transparent manner. That is how it's going to happen. There's no way out, at least in my experience.
So I'll try and respond to it to the best of my learning so far. But first of all, it has to be a very dedicated long-term commitment, no questions asked. The second thing is that your point on that the improvements are only 10 to 15%. Unfortunately, if you are only going to optimize the current interventions, I don't think optimizations are expected to work beyond 15, 20, 25%, right? So I think what needs to happen is identification and then addition of different value chains that can be integrated, which can be suited for this specific community. Because if you're just going to, and this holds true for farmer incomes in general also, right? So if you look at productivity increase improvements, none of the projects can actually deliver 100% productivity improvement. You can only do it to a certain percentage. Beyond that, it is about adding value chains, intercropping, multi-cropping. So I think there has to be a parallel drawn for the community specifically to say that how do we multiply, right? And multiplication wouldn't come from optimization. Multiplication would come from addition of value chains. And before that, identification of what all can be done, right? So in some of the cases, as I gave the examples, introduction of value chains of livestock to the communities which do not have access to it, introduction of crops or plantations which don't require a lot of land for them to happen. Maybe enterprises being set up in that way where some of the waste material from the agri produce can be converted into something more usable. So I think a lot of interventions have to be experimented with before a concrete path can be laid out. But I would just like to believe that some of that should ideally work.
What about this gentleman's question? The 16% of Maharashtra's FPOs are actually operational. Anyone wants to take that? Please go ahead.
So I actually mentioned it that large amount of investment and large producer enterprises are going to sustain. That is for whatever new schemes are also coming up for FPOs. We don't see a future for them. So even the community institutions which were existing earlier, somehow with the SHG, VO and CLF system, it is in place now. But for FPOs, as of now, whatever success I was mentioning, what we have done in Uttar Pradesh or for that matter in other states, or some 25 or 40 FPOs that are in promotion, they're going to be large scales. Only then they'll be. Otherwise, we are going to see a bad face of the FPOs.
Yes, please.
Can I?
FPOs okay. Rather, you said no, that if things are not happening, then FPOs are going to go down the drain. So, what is the plan of the government to make it a successful one?
Please introduce yourself.
I'm Avnish Kumar Singh from Cropin.
Thanks.
Yeah. So what I was mentioning, based on last 3-4 years of experience in NRLM, what we have seen, FPOs with large shareholding, that is more than 20,000 plus, with large amount of investment, not specifically in going into crores, 20 crores or more, and spread over 4-5 districts. They have all the specific whatever techno managerial support. We have a good CEO, we have a good finance, production, all of those kind of people in place. We pay them good salaries, and for that matter, whatever working capital etc. is being required, that is provided. Those kind of FPOs are going to work. Otherwise, the normal FPOs will going to have difficulties. That is what I'm just trying to say.
May not be possible, right? you may need a mix of FPO, small, medium kind of thing. So what is the government planning to do so that the smaller ones or medium ones are also successful?
So so access to finance is one. Access to finance through the normal systems in the government, and for that matter, there's various NBFCs which are coming up. That is there, and then some kind of specific capacity building support which goes from the government system to each of the FPOs. And this is I'm talking about the specific program that recently has been launched. So, but beyond that, it's about the promoting agencies and how the intention is that for 5 years they are supposed to be supported. That particular agencies, the CBP will support that. So those kind of things will go in a long term, but still we need to see success in that regard. So it's not an end for that matter. We are not saying that it's going to be successful. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes,
Yeah, can I
Saroj
just-
and then
yeah.
Nishant.
Can I just respond to these questions related to FPOs actually? I think you are very right. 16% of the FPOs are functional, and this figure may reduce actually to 5% also if we do not intervene in a very systematic manner. Yeah. So I think there are four factors which need to be looked at actually, in my experience. Like FPOs should not be schematized actually. Like the question you were asking nowadays, these are schematized actually. One need to promote 25 FPOs or 50 FPOs. So this should not be schematized. It should be a very much dynamic process actually. It all depends on the local area economy and what is the demand in the local area, and then what the people are producing. Is there a surplus market or is it a deficit market? That part we need to understand. And at the same time, I think access to finance, access to credit, access to this investment also, these are very critical actually. And at the same time, how we can facilitate the farmer or the women collectives to go for large scale diversification of activities. Like if like millets, you have shared the example of millets. It's a very good example actually. Like in some of the states, they've introduced this MSP for millets actually to facilitate to go for large scale millets cultivation. But many a times what the APOs are doing, like they're doing the commodities like vegetables actually. So which is a perishable commodities, and the risk factor is very high actually. So if we can minimize the risks, and if we can promote contravariant activities like vegetable plus millets or vegetable plus pulses, so these are contravariant activities. These are not covariant activities actually. So I think such type of mixing of activities like the diversification, and then like the allied activities like livestock, backyard poultry, or the goat rearing activities that can be integrated with the family's livelihood overall portfolio, so as to sustain the family in case there is a loss actually. Ultimately, that women member of the household should not be deprived of all those facilities actually. I mean, we can facilitate to, they can sense the opportunities and they can intervene accordingly actually. So in my understanding, this should not be schematized. This should be this should be as per the demand of the community. And this is a long process actually. Like at least I think community collectives, then strengthening the panchayats, and then creating that ecosystem, and then I think the community service providers are the promoting agri entrepreneurs to ensure the basic services or the support services like quality seeds in many of the areas where we've been promoting FPOs, that the quality seeds, quality knowledge, it's missing actually. So how the farmers can go for regenerative agriculture practices, and then looking at the overall perspective into the climate action and then ecology, those factors to be integrated actually. So I've already said that all the intervention has to be very much comprehensive in that sense. Yeah, thank you.
Quickly, Nishant.
Yeah. We'll try to summarize what I wanted to say. No. So if you look at just the data of 15%, right? I don't have access to that data, but if you look at the 85% which are dysfunctional, it is very imperative to actually check uh, uh, what percentage of that went inactive because of lack of governance, because they never got into the business of input, or which they did not get into the business of output, right? So I think there is a templatization to some extent that needs to happen to make an FPO sustainable, which should actually lead to say that, okay, first step, governance, fix the governance in X months. B, get into the input business, but don't restrict yourself to input business, because input businesses don't give long-term sustainability. So as quickly as you can move to the output business, which then becomes a lot more sustainable, is the first. So there is one element to say that get into the output business as quickly as possible, right? Now the other part of it, rather easy said than done. How do you get there? Of course, access to finance becomes critical, but also at the same time, having a very active SHG ecosystem, which is leading to the formation of the FPO, is very critical, because in most of the cases you would see that the FPOs become dysfunctional, of course, because of lack of access to finance, lack of understanding of how to govern, how to get into the businesses, but also because there is a huge mistrust between the farmer and the FPO itself. And that emanates from the fact that SHG ecosystem is not very active in that FPO, or there is not a homogeneous mix of people who have come together to form the FPO. So the farmers don't engage with the FPO, and then FPO is not able to provide services to the farmers, and even when it does, the farmers don't use those services. So I think it's a mixture of both templatizing one and creating grassroots level structures which are very active and vibrant. Yeah.
Great.
Can I just 1 minute? I just
20 seconds.
Okay. So from a purely ultra poor perspective, FPO is one of the ways we have to accept that. Whatever is coming to our mind, whatever we think correct, we are just doing that. As Saroj said, that we have to diversify the value chain. We also have to diversify the market options. And I think there are areas where we need to still explore. We don't know many things for ultra poor, and we have to accept that. So thank you.
So I'm going to conclude this session now. One more question. Okay. Please introduce yourself.
Brajesh from Ambuja Foundation.
The mic's not working.
Just a small question actually. Generally we observed that initially when we form women collective or farmer collective, 1 year, 2 year, all farmers participate and take benefits. But after 1 year, 2 year or 3 years, only few take benefited and remaining other members are just participating. So how you would deal these situations?
Who's going to answer it very quickly?
So I think what you mean by benefit needs to be explored a little more. So if it is input business, what we have also seen that the input business is easily replicable. Once the FPO set up input shops, there are a lot of private players that come in and then offer competitive prices in the same geography once the business case has been established, right? And over a period of time, the farmers who were only engaging in the input business tend to gravitate towards different options, right? However, it is very difficult to replicate the output aggregation business. So if the FPO can get into the output aggregation business and form deep market linkages, it creates a lot more stickiness. There is some observation that only X percentage of farmers engage with the FPO. I think all the FPOs need to keep that percentage in mind to say that in the starting itself, we need to target, let's say, 60 to 70% of the farmers or the shareholders actually engaging with some activity or the other, and then over a couple of years finding what works for each farmer. But if in the starting itself is 10 to 20%, then of course it's going to be an uphill task from there.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm going to conclude the session now. And what I've heard from our esteemed panelists is that if we want to create market access for ultra-poor women, we need patient, dedicated public resources, like Nishikant was saying, a high-quality human interface that Saroj and Diganto stressed, patient coaching, capacity building, and I think what all of you were stressing, which is that market access for women cannot be understood or cracked without understanding women's household burdens, their nutritional needs, violence against them, their lack of self-confidence, and empowerment in general. So I think those are the things I heard. But I think I want to leave the panel and the audience with a question that why are we fixated on FPOs as an institutional structure, If 5%, 16% are working, are we going to spend the next 10 years just trying to flog this horse? Because why isn't there more institutional innovation? Why aren't we trying new things? And, the things that have worked, like cooperatives, however imperfect, or SHGs, however imperfect, have come from bottom up. Somebody tried them, it worked, then others tried them, it worked, and now they're at scale. This FPO seems to me a more top-down kind of company structure that's being imposed. So I'm wondering if there are questions around institutional innovation that all of you can take forward as you go about your work. So with that, we'll conclude. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for your questions. And thank you to the panelists.
Thank you, Shweta, for that concluding question that all of us, need to be thinking about and engaging with. I thank the panelists for an enriching and insightful session. A quick announcement I have to make. The NGOs which are being facilitated today are requested to head to the hall Inspire, which is right in front of the registration desk. And with this, we conclude day 1 of our Livelihoods India Summit. Thank you for your valuable time and presence here. We hope that we'll see you tomorrow here again. We have an equally interesting lineup ahead. Thank you.